She great. Uh, yeah, she started her career in Portland, Oregon, where she specialized in multifamily market rate projects before deciding to return to her roots in the Bay Area. When she returned, Shikha continued to work on multifamily projects, but pivoted her focus to affordable housing, as she felt it was a path to get back to the community that raised her. She started her path to licensure back in 2015, and although her journey was long, her dedication to representing first generation Pacific Islander women pushed her to achieve both her Oregon and California licenses. This sense of accomplishment after this milestone inspired her to give back to her colleagues and to create a workshop and a study group dedicated to licensure at her company. She's also a member of Professional Women in Building under the Building Industry Association of the Bay Area, where she is focused on educational outreach for emerging professionals. And she also serves as a San Francisco NOMA's Professional Development Chair. Second, we have Shadia Jaramillo. She is a project manager at Goodwin Mills, Kyle in Pensacola, Florida. She holds a bachelor's degree in architecture with a minor in history of architecture from the Fay Jones School of Architecture and Design at the University of Arkansas. And since she graduated in 2018, Shadi has gained a lot of experience across various project typologies, which include residential, commercial, higher education, healthcare, hospitality, and aviation projects. She's also embarked on her journey towards licensure in 2020 and has since been a steadfast supporter of others pursuing the same path. Her dedication culminated in the attainment of her professional license in March of last year. And Shadia is an active member of AIA Florida, where she serves in various committees. WIA, Communications in the Florida Career and Architect magazine. And she's also part of the AIA Florida Northwest component, where she co-founded the Women in Architecture Committee and currently serves as co-chair. She's passionate about mentorship and uses her social media platform to create content for emerging professionals, architects, and to educate the public about the value of architecture and design. And last but not least, we have Mr. Bryce Bounds, and it took him 15 years, 3 versions of the ARE, 2 states, and 1 pandemic to finally become a licensed architect, but he did it. He's from Miami. He attended the Design and Architecture Senior High and then RISD, Rhode Island School of Design, where he majored in architecture and fine art. He serves on NCARB's experience committee that guides the AXP process at the national level. And the architecture work that he has led or contributed to includes the restoration of Joe Stonecraft Historic Dining Room, the preservation of the Juliet Gordon Low House, where the Girl Scouts was founded, 2 Star Island residences, and the $54 million Broward Public School and renovations. He works in the public sector as a construction project management supervisor for Broward County Government. So those are our illustrious panelists. So thank you guys for taking time out of your day to kind of give some insight and some wisdom about the ARE and how to really get started. And so the first question that we have to pose to you guys is, why should we take the AREs in the first place?
I'd be happy to take that one. The AREs are, contrary to popular belief, not actually a test designed to test whether you're a good designer at all. They're actually just there to test and confirm that you have the competency required to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. The reality is, what we do every day, guys, is we create buildings that are occupied by others, and we need to make sure that we protect them in ways big and small. That's the only reason the AREs exist, to make sure that we all meet a standard level of competency.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point, that it's a standard. No one's really an expert. You're acquiring your experience as you go. I would say that the reason you should aspire to complete your ARE process is because ultimately you're going to become an architect, and that's going to open so many doors for you. There's so many avenues that you can take once you get licensed. And I think just getting that, that paper really brings that to the table for you, and the respect that brings as well when you step into a room or you're making decisions, and also becoming kind of like the example for the rest that are coming behind you.
So I've got a spicy take on this. Personally, I don't think any of us can tell you a why, because everybody's why is personal. So if you're taking this ARE and you're starting out and you're overwhelmed, I encourage all of you to take a piece of paper and ask yourself why you're doing it, because our whys are not going to be the same. Now, for me personally, I didn't want to get a master's. And to me, an ARE license, passing that and becoming a licensed architect, that was my master's. And I wear that with a lot of pride. I have that framed over my desk, over my degree. I don't even know where my college degree is, but I swear to God, I went. So because that, I gave it that importance, that's what kept me motivated to keep going with my AREs. In addition to the why being that I equated it to a master's, I also knew that it was going to open a lot of doors for me for my own personal career growth. I knew that I had ambitions to be a leader, and at my firm personally, it is valued to have our leaders be licensed. So I knew that would open an avenue there for me. And another thing that I felt was important with the AREs is that as I started studying for it, because I thought that's what you were supposed to do, I realized that I was becoming smarter at what I was doing every day. And that level of knowledge that I felt, quite frankly, this is so funny, sitting on an ARE chat and just being all vulnerable and exposed. I was a really bad student, y'all. I didn't pay attention to nothing in school. And it sucked because I felt like I had to fill a lot of gaps when I went into the profession. And I found out that that's actually just in general. So I wasn't the only one feeling that.
We
But
all feel that.
because I
Mhm.
was filling in those gaps, the AREs helped fill those gaps in for me. So those were probably my big 3 whys as to why I chose to do it. But if you guys are starting out, figure out your own why. And you'll actually discover that there are different whys that come about, because as I hit that last 2 exams that I couldn't get over, then I started looking at statistics and I was like, wow, there are a lot of Fijian women who are licensed architects. And there's probably one who is looking for that example and that role model. And I got to be that one for her.
Mhm.
All right.
You piggyback on what Shikha said about having your why. That also helps you when you're like burnt out in the process, like looking back at what you wrote. Because I did that. I wrote my whys in a little book, and I said this on another similar to ARE chats. And as soon as I knew I was burnt out and I kept on failing the one test PPD, I just went back to my why, and that really like refreshes that in your memory. Like I gotta achieve that, and I have to cross the finish line. So.
And it doesn't need to be deep and profound. Like, because
Yeah.
if you are not feeling great one day and you're like, what's my why? Well, I paid for these already. I'm already in the hole. Maybe that's your why. And it's
Okay.
okay. It's okay. You just need your own personal reason to keep doing it.
And I will jump on your spicy take. In almost 20 years in this profession now, I have been laid off 5 times, including in multiple recessions. And there is no better protection, whether we want to acknowledge it all the time or not, to being able to be self-sustaining than having a license. Without a license, you're always going to depend on someone else for a job.
Wow. Thank you. That's very true. So to follow up on that, how should we begin our ARE journey in the first place? Do you have any suggestions?
Oh, goodness.
That's where I think there's no right answer.
Mhm.
Some people blaze it. Look, statistically, some people blaze it in 2 years and 6 months. Does it happen? Absolutely. Does that make them a better architect than someone else? Absolutely not. But there is no specific path to do it. It's just find the test that's best for you and just dive right in.
I got dumped, and that's why I started. So bad breakup, and then I went through and did it. But in seriousness, what I would recommend for getting started with your journey is it's more of a what not to do. I wouldn't recommend saying, I'm gonna get started, I'm gonna get started, I'm gonna get started, because before you know it, it's gonna be like 3 years, and then all of a sudden you didn't start anything. I would take a look and have kind of a real moment with yourself where you sit there and you kind of think, okay, I need to make this a priority. Unless you have that mental shift that the exams are going to be a priority in your life, they're never going to be a priority in your life. So you have to make that mental decision on your own that you're ready to take them and you're ready to make them a priority for a temporary moment of your life. It does not need to take up your entire day and your entire life. It's just going to take up a little fraction of it. So make that mental decision. And then lastly, I forgot my last point, so I'm going to pass it to Shadia.
No, I agree with you guys. I think making it a priority, but also finding the balance, because if you make it a big priority and you leave the rest of your life on the side, you're gonna get to burnout, which is something that I talk a lot about because I was burnt out throughout the process. But yeah, I would say just like research about it. I think nowadays there's a lot of information. There are a lot of study groups out there. We're going to talk about some of those today. I know Shikha is part of one. So just reach out to people. Everybody's always willing to help you. There's NCARB, the website. They have all kinds of information. But just getting with someone that has gone through the process and then saying, okay, well, I'm going to start with PCM because this really aligns with what I'm doing at work right now. Try to tie it into something that you're doing so that you're in that field of knowledge and it kind of lines up and it pairs with whatever you take on first.
2 pieces there. That's great advice because I started in 4.0. So I was doing a CA project and I started with CDS. What?
CE now.
Yeah, CDS. So it was funny because I just kind of winged it and took it. And then within like 2 weeks, so I failed. Spoiler alert. I failed. And then within like 3 weeks, I had known the answers to most of my ARE questions because I was doing it in real life. And if I just sat on it for a minute, I probably would have passed and been more motivated to keep going. The other thing too, since we're talking about starting and kicking off, the hard truth is that you guys are always going to make excuses if the tests always scare you. You're going to make excuses and it's never going to feel like the right time. I always hear people say, oh, I'll do it, before I have kids, or I'll do it before I get married, or I'll do it before this event happens. I'll do it before my birthday. There are millions and millions and millions and millions of excuses that you are going to make and keep kicking the can down the road. Now, that isn't to say that there aren't people out there who are very disciplined and ready to go, but that's why earlier when I said it's important to have your mindset set and you have to make the priority, because if not, you're just going to keep kicking the can down the road. And there's never really going to be a great time to do it. Sometimes you just got to Nike and just do it.
Yeah, I always say 50% of the battle is showing up. After that, you are giving the 50% extra, which is the knowledge and taking the test and all that. So yeah, I would agree with that comment.
I did that exactly, Shikha.
Yeah, that was to the parents, because I most of the students that I talk to, call them students, they're parents and they have lifed harder than I have. So I get it and I've heard it. I'm not a parent, but I understand what it means to take away time from your kid and your family versus studying. And I totally get that. But again, this is why your why is important. Because if your why is, hey, I'm setting an example. I like to tell people this all the time too. I feel like I told Stacy this. Your kid is watching every action you do right now. So as you're sitting there studying, even if your kid's a toddler, they're going to recognize the moment that their parent became an architect and how hard they worked. And they're going to have that example there. So use know and move through this journey with that in the back of your head if you do have kids. So just remember that they're watching your moves.
Absolutely. If you start and you don't actually commit to a plan, it's going to be 15 years, which is exactly what happened to me. And you're suddenly going to realize, great, I'm making good money, but I've reached a ceiling and there's nowhere to go but here. So
I took 8.
I am going to hit one thing that you brought up, Brandon, which is how do you begin the journey? It's not a secret that every test has overlap here, everyone. So the minute you can find one test that's accessible, which I love the idea being thrown around here, that find the one that pairs well with what you're doing at work right now and use that as your dive-in point. And if you can find that one, then you can find the next one next to it that's got an overlap with it. Because all the tests are I'm going to throw out a random number here, 15 to 20% of the material is roughly overlapped between every exam. So if you can find one, you have already beaten 15% of the next one. So you're already on the journey and you can just keep putting one foot in front of the other.
That's a good point because, go ahead, Shikha.
Are we allowed to get a little technical here and like talk about the exams thoroughly?
You can
to a point
do
where
so.
it protects people and does not
Oh,
warrant. Yes,
exactly.
so we have to keep the NCARB
Of
requirement.
course.
Okay,
Mr.
yeah.
NCARB is here, so I get that. That's not what I was talking about. If you were to look at all 6 exams as a whole, there are 2 avenues. There is a professional practice avenue and a technical avenue. So what I like to tell people who are like, I don't know where to start, I don't know where to go, I like to see where they're at in terms of, did you just graduate? Have you been working for a couple of years? Have you not been working for a couple of years? That's the first path that I look at. And if it's someone who just graduated but is eager to get started, I recommend starting with pro practice. It's about 75 questions for the exam. It's not a long sit like the PPDs and PDDs and PAs of our exams. And ultimately, you're looking at 3 resources for those 3 exams. You're looking at PCM, for PCM, PJM, and CE. You're looking at Architect's Handbook of Professional Practice, and you're looking at your AIA contracts. So it's not a lot of dense material. So if you're someone who's trying to just get your feet wet, I like to tell people to start with the pro practice exams. So again, that's PCM, PJM, and CE, with CE being on the later end. Now, if you're someone who's like, I'm going to shove bamboo under my fingernails if I have to read a contract first thing first, and I would much rather not do that, then you can try to look at the technical avenues, the PAs, the PPDs, and PDDs. Just know that the amount of preparatory work that you're going to do towards those exams is going to be a lot denser than what you would do if you were practicing for the pro practice exams. Was that in the rules, Bryce?
That is within the rules.
Okay.
I sprinkle those pro practice questions throughout all of the tests too.
Yep.
So once
Exactly.
you get that base, I always tell people to start with PJM just because that's a contract heavy roles and responsibilities. And that is covered in all tests. So you won't go wrong with starting with pro practice, that's for sure.
Exactly.
Now conversely, often people just coming out of college have the least experience with the actual material pro prac covers.
True.
So
Mhm.
you're purely approaching it from an academic standpoint.
Exactly.
And not every test question is there to test, do you academically understand it?
Mhm.
But you're
So,
still in that study mode from
Yep.
And it's
coming
easier.
to
I wouldn't
college.
say it's easier to learn, but you come in fresh and you're open to it. And firms are not always following your AIA contracts. Every firm does things a little differently. So while yes, you should rely on your professional experience, you have more of a blank slate with those exams that you're able to absorb that knowledge. And I agree with Bryce. I think that yes, you aren't exposed to it, but I feel that that's a little bit more of an advantage when you're just starting out.
it can be
Yeah.
both.
Yep.
You know, the one of the dangers you have to realize too is that no matter what, there is no award for finishing your AREs the fastest. And I am all about licensing as many architects as possible in this
Mhm.
country. But at the same time, there is no race to the finish. So do it in the methodology that helps you learn. Don't try and just, oh, I got to finish it in 2.5 years. I'm going to finish it in 3 years. I have to beat this other guy who's in my studio. He's working on it too. You have to do it in a method that actually helps you learn. Because if you're not learning the material, you're not
Mhm.
becoming a better architect. Don't just become book smart.
Yep. Yep. And I have classic examples of that, but we have a list of questions, so I'll circle back to that.
That was good. Thank you for that insight. Appreciate it. And kind of what Bryce was alluding to about having a study plan and not procrastinating. Did you guys create a study plan for yourselves when you were going through the ARE journey?
The first time, no.
Nope.
No.
The first time, no. So when I say the first time, I should give a little bit of context. So I started back in 2015, took the CA exam, failed it, then did the whole, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it for like a year. And then finally I did commit to like, I'm going to get this done. Signed up for it in December or for a December exam date. And then at the time we were very heavy as a community about reading Ballast and Brightwood. So that's what I did. Went through, focused on it, read a chapter a day, and went from there and passed it. But then the next 2 exams didn't do so hot, so it's fine. What I noticed is that once that transition happened from 4.0 to 5.0, we're in 5.0 land. I went into PPD, took it to just see what it was like, failed with flying colors, then the pandemic hit. And I was kind of like, and it took me a year from passing from the 4.0 transition to getting in the chair to take the PPD exam. And again, it was that whole kick the can, kick the can, kick the can. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to study. It wasn't until, and there was a couple more fails in between them for PPD and PDD. over the next 2 years from 2020 to 2022. When I was finally sitting there and saying, enough is enough. I'm done with this. I'm gonna pass. The couple things that I changed is I got very methodical about what I was going to study. At that point, I had taken these exams 3 times each and failed. So I had seen the test and I knew what was on there and I knew what I studied and I had read the resources about 3 times. I had to change strategy at that point. So what I did is I call it the 600 question blitz, and I took 6 practice tests per exam. So for PPD and PDD, that's 100 questions each, 600. I spread that out over 3 months of studying and basically did a deep dive on each question. And the way I made sure I covered it all was I got my little moleskin notebook and I wrote out every single topic that I could think was going to show up on this exam. Topics that we all know about, ballast Brightwood. I went through the table of contents, wrote out, need to know about HVAC systems, about this, that, blah, blah, blah. Wrote it all down, made a checklist. When I learned about the topic, I would check it off. When I went back and reviewed the topic, I would color over the check mark. So that's how I knew internally, I did a gut check that I had done everything in my power at that point, once I colored off that box, to know everything I need to know for the exam. So that was kind of how I started to strategize. I got more intentional of what I was doing and what I was reading, and it proved to work. But I think a lot of that is rooted in the fact that I had to accept that I knew the material. I just needed to get used to reading the question. And that's why I did the 600 question blitz.
Yep. I will second the testing methodology, by the way. What I did during the pandemic when I realized I didn't have a job anymore was I started watching videos every single day, and every third day I paid for, and I had to borrow money from family members to get a subscription to one of the testing companies that provides online testing, that sample versions of the test. And I would just sit there and do a complete 5-hour actual test. Don't do the little 30-second quizzes. Don't do the little, 2-hour. If you're going to do it, do the full test as if you were sitting in the testing center, and put yourself to see, because it's not just about, do I know the material? It's, can I be in the right mindset? And you're only going to do that if you actually commit to living that truth and doing the tests as if they're the real thing.
Yeah, I guess it's my turn. I have a similar story to Shikha, actually. I started in 2019, took PCM, had no idea what I was doing, didn't really know much. I'd read some of the NCURB information, but that was about it. Went in, I kind of knew before going in that I was going to fail, but I said, heck, 50% of the battle is showing up. So I did it, failed that first one. Then in 2020, I took another one, and then I kind of took a break. I was like, maybe this is not for me. And I signed up for grad school for some reason. And then 2020 happened. And of course, I wasn't going to go to grad school. So then my birthday is in July. And I was like, what do I really want? And I was like, I want to get licensed. I want to be an architect. I went to school for 7 years. I'm from Panama, 2 years in Panama, 5 years here. And that was my end goal. And so I was like, I'm going to do what it takes. So I don't know if you guys know about boot camp, but I signed up for a boot camp. And I did the 10-week intense study plan. And that really helped me, because I needed a syllabus. I needed to feel like I had a plan, like a study plan, and they provided that. So I went through that, and that kind of helped me align and discover all the topics, meet people, which was super helpful, because I started discovering what were my learning styles. And that's something that I highly, highly, highly recommend you do. Like, I tried everything possible. I tried taking notes. I tried flashcards. I tried the taking the exam, like if it was exam day with the break and everything. And then I discovered that I'm definitely not a flashcard person. That was kind of like a waste of time. Like, I didn't retain anything. I'm definitely a visual learner. So sign up for Amber Book. That really helped. So my plan was that, just kind of discovering what really worked for me. And then I used test crits to kind of do what Shikha did, where I really dove deep into all of the topics per test. And then I was like, okay, I understand this. I understand this topic. And I would recommend focusing on less passing practice tests, but more understanding the topics, understanding the information. Because as long as you understand that, then you can take on any question that comes at you during a test.
Which brings in the most important thing that I think any of us could highlight to any of the people watching us here today. To a certain extent, the ARE is a test that tests your ability to take a test.
Mm-hmm.
I know
Yeah.
that doesn't sound like it makes sense, but this is all about how do you test, not about do you actually know the material. Do
I
you
would
need to
agree
know
with
the
that.
material and be competent? Absolutely.
You heard it here first from
From
NCARB.
NCARB.
We scream it from the hilltops, but nobody listens. NCARB is about being able, and the AREs are about being able to synthesize information to represent and show that you are a competent professional. This is not to prove that you know every little nook and cranny of everything.
Yes.
Nobody does. It's why I've got a bookshelf behind me.
Yeah.
This is
And that-
about knowing how to be a professional who knows when you don't know things and knows how to find and work out information.
And that's why I always tell people, it's knowing the basic concepts. This is not
Yep.
about being an expert at all. And if English is my second language, and for me, the hardest thing was understanding what they were asking me, literally, because I knew the topics. I had the knowledge to take on the test. The hardest part is reading those questions and identifying what is the information that's needed and what is the information that they're giving me extra that I don't really need. I don't need this information for this question. They're trying to trick me. Sorry, Bryce. But yeah, and I sat down with people, with my friends, that their first language was English, and I would kind of see how they read the questions and how they identified those terms. Then I would start learning on those tricks.
Yeah.
So
I tell everybody, so I tutor these exams now through Be Young Design, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I tell everybody this is a reading comprehension test. That is what
100%.
standardized testing is. It is reading comprehension, which is why it is very important to do the 600 question blitz, because the more you can understand how these questions are being asked in different languages, which is essentially why you do all these questions, it becomes easier and easier to dissect. And it is not lost on me that English sometimes isn't somebody's first language. And that's why standardized testing is harder. And it's a fact that we need to accept. It is. NCARB, I'm very proud to see the studies and the collaboration that they're doing with NOMA and recognizing that, because I'm very blessed that I went through and did speech and debate, and I actually speak worse Hindi now than I used to when I was a kid. But I understand that's not the situation for everybody. And that, again, is why these questions are so important to practice. You are learning a new language, but it is not a hindrance. It's not. I think that's all I have for that.
I'd like to actually jump in and bring up I know that we have a question about products and tools that we use.
Next one. Yeah, go ahead, Bryce. Yeah.
Yep. So I'm gonna kind of blunt you a little, Shikha. There is no right way. I know you want to talk about your right way, but that's the thing. It's your right way.
Exactly.
You know, Shadia, you had your right way. I had my right way. And there is no right one. For me, I started under ARE 3.1 actually. And God, that was a painful test back when you still had to draft and draw an entire building section. Now, what did I use? I used the ballast books that we still have left over from 4.0. And let me give you a hint, guys, and this is not a secret, so I can say it here on this talk. Every test question comes from an actual textbook that you used in college if you went to a NAB accredited degree. And in fact, the requirement on the test writing committee for those who write exam questions, and I have been in that room and seen how that sausage is made, is that every test question must trace back to at least 2 separate sources of information that can verify that it is a correct answer. So there is not a trick question on the test so much as there is a, did you understand the question correctly, which is not the same thing. Everyone,
in your head it's a trick question, but
yes,
yeah, I understand what you're
absolutely.
saying.
Absolutely.
You have to be able to like yeah, understand what they're asking and like kind of separate the two
I
things.
caught that too. I caught that. And that was when it changed for me. That was when I started passing, was
Yep.
spoiler alert, at the back of your 5.0 guidelines handbook, there is a whole reference matrix. I swear if you comb through it, especially
Yes.
after a fail, you will have a lot of moments of self-realization, and I'll just leave it at that. So look at that resource list and get every book you can off of it.
Amazon used at the end of the school year every June.
Or rent. I
Yeah.
rented everything from Amazon, and it was awesome and cost effective.
Also,
And the
use your
library,
AI
imagine
local
that.
library.
Yep, the library.
Now, for me, my personal route, I studied the crap out of ballast constantly because the man's book is a Bible, and because it's not current with the 5.0 series, you can pick up his very large tome book for the 4.0 version on Amazon for probably about $30 to $40 right now. I don't make money from the man. I don't get anything for recommending it, but it's honestly just a book you should have on your shelf anyway for $40 because you will find yourself referencing it. I did that. I did hyperfine test prep, which I found was great for some of the more mathematically inclined questions. And then I watched a whole lot of Black Spectacles. I love Black Spectacles. Pro tip, speed the videos up to 2 times because that
Never use
man
Black
has
Spectacles.
great information, but God, does he talk slow.
I use Amber Book since we're talking about study materials. I don't know if I'm getting ahead, but I use Amber Book. For, like I said, I use Bootcamp as well. They have a lot of resources. But Amber Book was definitely my number one. I use PPI questions at the bank. What else? ELIF questions for PDD and PPD. They're amazing. Probably way more difficult than the AREs themselves. And then what was the study material that it's like a syllabus and they give you weekly homeworks? Hyperfine.
Yes.
Hyperfine is incredible. If you're taking PCM, I would say Hyperfine Financial Workbook is probably the best thing you can do for yourself. It has little videos of all the financial terms, and it really allows you to understand something that's completely new to you potentially. That is not something that we touch on in school. So, yeah.
YouTube is your friend also.
Yep.
There are
YouTube,
so many
definitely.
great playlists that just other architects going through this process have put together. You know, you're never going to find a better playlist than some random guy who passed 10 years ago who did a whole playlist on the refrigerant cycle that you don't understand.
Yes.
So explore YouTube playlists.
Yep. Don't sleep on YouTube. Get on that treadmill, get your body flowing and, you know, blood pumping and all that, and watch some YouTube videos. That is a great, efficient use of your time. I don't have much else to add to the resources. I mean, I've done everything that you guys have. I can proudly say I have tried every single resource under the sun, all the way down to like Pluralsight and Thaddeus structure videos. I've done it all. But the one that I didn't hear mentioned, and it's hard to make it not sound biased because I work for them now, but truly Mind Over ARE by Bryn Young Design. I joined her program. She was very gracious to give it to me under a scholarship, so I didn't have to pay. And what's different about that program is, again, it's about mindset. There's 2 portions of it. There's portions dedicated to content, where I'm your coach for technical exams, and my partner is a coach for the pro practice exams. But Bryn, what she takes on is the anxiety that goes behind the AREs. So when she first started the program, and she asked me my feedback, I told her it's basically paying for therapy for the AREs. And so if you're someone who suffers from a lot of test anxiety, or you want to be able to get strategies of how to calm your nerves, how to get out of your own way, specifically to the ARE exam, sprinkled with a bit of content, please reach out to me and I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about Mind Over ARE. If you're kind of like, I don't really want to sign up for another program, Bryn has a bunch of resources available as well. She's got a activity book dedicated to the ARE. So it's kind of like a crossword of ARE terms and word searches for things that you need to know the definition to. She's made a workbook about that. She has a study plan that's compiled all the resources together. We have a partnership with Hyperfine that we also participate with when you get the program. And again, it's not just focused on getting your mind right and making sure that you're taking care of yourself and figuring out that work-life balance and how to recover from a fail. You also get content coaching from myself and another coach. So it is another program that's available. A lot of people don't hear about it, but it's a great program. You guys can watch the videos and see how you feel about it. So yeah.
Now, I do have to jump in here and remind everyone that as great as all these resources are, there are a few things you absolutely shouldn't do. There are websites out there. They do possess old questions. And you should understand that when you go into an exam, and you'll have to agree to this, but we all know we didn't read it. We just hit agree and continued on to our test. If you've taken one now, remember, do not talk about the questions that you have taken for that day. Do not go home and do an info dump. Do not jump on a Discord server and be like, guys, these are the questions I had today. Because
Yeah.
NCARB pays a lot more attention than you realize. There is an entire strike team of a few individuals who just scour the internet for this. And there really are people who have realized that for the rest of their life, they will never be able to finish the AREs because they've been banned for them. And they now have a degree and they'll have to spend the rest of their life working for someone because it was so worth it to tell others what questions they got on an exam. It's never, ever worth it. And those websites where you think you found great questions, chances are they're questions that have been retired because NCARB actually does put some of those out there just to test what's still being circulated around.
Wow, I had no idea that was a thing, but I do
Yeah.
have to say something on a happier note about that is one of the things that I did after a fail was do a brain dump, but I didn't do a brain dump of questions. I did a brain dump of topics because once you do a brain dump of questions, you get so hung up on trying to figure out what the answer was that you probably don't even really remember what the question was about, like truly. So I would say do a brain dump of the topics, specifically the topics that you were not sure of throughout the test, and then do your research and study towards that. So
And if it's a word, you're going to gain more learning about the word than you are about the question.
yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Okay,
You're never
thank
going
you
to
so
get the
much.
same question twice. So
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, we have about 15 minutes left. I want to get to some questions that are in the chat.
Yes.
Emily asked, is there a preferred website or program you would recommend to use for practice exams in addition to the NCARB website?
I think we covered that with the
Yeah.
Amber Book and the Elif and the PP. I do like PPI to pass a lot.
Mhm.
That you get to customize your quiz and the
Mhm.
questions that you want to use. It is owned by the people who wrote Ballast and Brightwood. So if you get on there and you're like, huh, some of this looks repetitive, it's probably because it is. It's from the back of those books, but the benefit of being able to choose, I want to do 20 questions today and I want them all to be math related, or I want them all to be focused on this content area that of the objectives that you get out of the exam, and they'll give you those questions. So that's kind of nice to have it be customizable. So don't sleep on it.
I was big on black spectacles, especially when I got into the pandemic and I really focused on studying. Pro tip, you don't need the I'm looking at it right now. You don't need the Expert or Pro subscriptions. What you need is you need the videos, you need the time to watch them. Again, speed them up to 2 times, and you need the quizzes. I'm a huge proponent of take as many quizzes and test exams as you can. It works your brain to think about questions and to think about pacing yourself, which is a big part of this exam too.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't
thank
have
you.
anything else to add. I think we've talked a lot about testing resources, and I think you will be provided with something at the end of the call too.
Yes, I was. The second question is, in terms of structure, did you all have a study plan or decide to take out the work?
I think it was a little different for those of us who may have been navigating the 4.0 to 5.0 transition. Because we took some exams under one version and then had to move to another. So it was about how NCARB mapped us from one to the other. And our strategy probably was different than someone who would take it now.
The question was like, if we studied after work or took time off. I didn't really understand it, Brandon.
Yeah, the question was, do you have to take, I guess, taking off work as far as studying? Like, did you take off work to study?
I didn't. I studied about 1 to 2 hours after work. Sometimes I studied during lunch time as well. And then I did study a bunch during the weekend, but I
I-
try to balance it out.
I would take 2 days off before my exam. And
Oh,
one day
definitely.
would be a massive review of everything that I read. And then 12 o'clock the day before the test, hard stop. And I would force myself
Yes.
to do something
Something fun.
fun. I would not be having fun. I would be a strung up mess. So I'm not going to sit here and front that I was totally normal because that's not true. But the physical putting away my books, keeping them out of my sight, and walking around and doing stuff, even though in the back of my head I was still going through memorization facts, I forced myself to stop at 12 o'clock the night before a test.
Yeah.
Cannot
And one more
emphasize
thing.
that enough. Go ahead.
Don't look at any new topics like a couple of days or like the week before the test, because I feel like that, at least for me, totally freaked me out. Like if I started looking at some new content that I've never seen before and then I start freaking out that I don't know it the day or two before the test, that would really, I basically would sabotage my experience taking the
Yeah.
test. So I
I
definitely
would
wouldn't
save
recommend that.
memorizing certain facts for the couple hours before I would have my 12 o'clock shut off, and I would know them cold then, and I would know them cold for the exam. But if you ask me to this day, memorizing any of those facts, I don't know them. I don't know 'em because I crammed. And it's hilarious because
Yeah.
I can talk to you about any other like topic and teach it to you. But if you ask me anything about those clearances that I crammed,
Nope.
bruh, look it
In
up.
and
Like,
out.
I don't know the answer. I'm so sorry.
So I'm gonna pound in on this one.
Yeah.
I've given this advice to a couple people who are on this chat today, and you guys are just echoing it. You know, if you're gonna schedule a morning exam, for example, when you get to Prometric or PSI, do not try and study for the 3 hours between when you wake up and your exam starts. Stop the night before, wake up fresh, and just find your peace. Because if you don't know it by the night before the exam, you're not going to suddenly learn it in the 2.5 to 3 hours before your exam starts in the morning.
100%. And get to the testing center early. That way you don't have to stress on the way there. If you're taking it in person, if you're taking it online, just prep before, make sure they approve your space and all of that. Have someone that knows about computers too. I had my fiance during my last test. I only took one online because I needed a change because I failed 5 times before that last one. And I just said, please deal with it. This is not going to stress me out. And he set everything up for me. So if you need to find someone that can do that for you the day off or the day before due.
And the last question is, do you have any advice to anyone who is discouraged about failing exams?
I have a story about that actually, and I see that Shantia in the chat was actually just asking the same thing, the mental battle about how you deal with failing an exam. So I'm going to tell everyone that you need to know yourself and you need to decide whether you want to see the preliminary results at the end, because they are not always right. I will tell you that as someone who has seen both sides of the process.
Oh.
When I took my last exam, the preliminary results said I failed. And I went out to the car and I just screamed into the steering wheel for 15 straight minutes because I had probably spent the last 3 months of my life trying to repass that one exam, only to get a notification 7 days later that I had passed it.
Oh,
So know yourself, know whether you can handle the preliminary result, remembering that it's preliminary. For some people, it may be better to simply walk away. Other people are not going to be able to and are going to click that yes, I want to see it button. Either way, if you do fail, do not try and go back and hammer the same exam. Again, remember the overlap I mentioned. Move to the adjacent test that you think has overlap or that people on the online forums are saying has overlap. Try and get that one and then come back to the one you failed. Because sometimes what you need is that refresh of looking at things from a different perspective.
yeah, that's good advice. Unless that's your last one and then you're screwed.
Then you're tortured.
You're not tortured. You need a break and you need
Yes.
to breathe and be kinder to yourself.
Mhm.
And you need to also understand that we have been wired at some point to make these exams a matter of life and death. And the
Yes.
reason you're afraid to pick up the pencil again and start studying is because your subconscious is now telling you and has associated this exam with danger and death. And you have to take a step out of it and come to the reality that you have given this test too much power and it needs to get knocked down a couple notches. You are in control of your own outcome with this exam, and you're in control with how you're going to handle this fail. The exam has no power over you. It does not. It is a thing that you choose to do, and it is a thing that opens a lot of doors for you. That I cannot deny. And it is an important exam, but it does not have power over you. And one thing that I love to tell all of my students that I work with is it's a little dramatic, but I'm like, did you die? Did anybody die because you didn't pass this exam?
Mhm.
Did the world stop spinning? Did, you know, I don't know, a hole open up and swallow the earth whole? None of that is true. Yet somehow when we hit that fail, it feels like that, but it's not grounded in reality. And if we all were able to literally visualize picking the test up and knocking it down just a notch, it becomes so much more simpler to take on.
Mhm.
So again, it doesn't sound like a tangible strategy in the moment when you're looking at the fail, but the next day after you nap or you eat or you do whatever, literally sit there and take a look at it and think about, okay, what is the power this exam has over me? How can I overcome this? And you got to get back in the saddle and try again when you're ready. When you're ready. But a lot of it comes, again, and I sound like a broken record, taking the power away from the exam.
100%. I think for me, that's something that I struggle with because I passed, after my first two fails, I passed 4 tests in a row in like a span of 2 months. And after that, I took the bigger ones, PPD and PDD, and I failed. Then I took one again and I passed it. And then I failed 5 times in a span of 2 years. I had to wait that 1 year cycle that they tell you to wait after the 3 tests, which at first I was so mad about it. And then I was like, this actually makes sense. Like there's a reason why they have that break. And it's because you've seen the questions. I took 5 tests. I've probably seen all of the questions on that test. And once you do that, once you take that test several times, you go in and you're like, I remember seeing this, and you pick the same answer because you're so sure that that's the answer. But it's all, you're not mentally ready to take it on and really look at the questions and understand what they're asking because you're so afraid of failing. You just want to pass. And I think taking a break, even if you don't want to, sometimes really helps refresh and changing that mindset.
Fear of failure is very real.
Mhm.
It's very real. It's something we all have to deal with, but it is not your identity. Failure is not your identity. And the
And
stronger you hold, and it's hard because I'm going to take a stretch here. We're NOMA. A lot of us are first gen. A lot of
Mhm.
us are, immigrants. A lot of us have those parents that, really beat down on you when you got a bad grade in school.
Mhm.
And yes, it felt bad then, but that's your parents. That's that. But we're adults now and we're working in our profession. We have to take that moment to recognize that failure is not our identity. It's not who we are. So don't
one thing-
internalize it. Don't make it your personality, and walk in and own it. Own it. You guys got this.
yeah,
There is nothing in your way except for you at this point. And that sounds like a cliche, but it's facts. The minute you take away the failure, I failed the ARE, the minute you remove that from your vocabulary, you'll have a different walk about you when you walk into PSI.
Again,
One-
I'm going to take it back to the beginning here, which is this test is not a measure of your ability as a designer. So don't let it have that power over you. It is not, did you choose the right profession? It is not, are you worth the money that your company's paying you? It is not, am I beating this other person in my family who's already on their own career path? This
Mhm.
is simply a measurement and an attempt to gauge in a very, very loose manner if you're ready to be on your own and be able to sign and seal drawings. And I know that's important. I know we all want to get there, but you will get there when you're ready. And trying to rush it is just going to be like ramming against a brick wall. So take it right and take your time with it to actually truly know the material. There's a difference
Yeah.
between memorization and understanding.
And pressuring yourself is never the right way. You're setting your own limitations for no reason. There's not even, well, some states still have a rolling clock, but to deal with. But you know, you were setting your own limitations, and this is not a race for a marathon, and you are that one runner that's trying to get to the finish line. So yeah.
And the rolling clock is slowly going away in the last states that have it. It's a matter of getting state legislatures to move and repeal laws.
And California's moving, so you know, once California moves, everybody else gonna move. So there you go.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for that words of wisdom and the insight. And speaking of passing exams, Kanisha on the call, she just finished her AREs. Kanisha, do you have any words of wisdom or just any words to share with the panel and everybody here?
Thank you. This was really great. I think starting off, talks like these are always good to get into so that you have like an overall view. For me, I liked seeing like everybody else's journey, even though it's their journey, just hearing what other people did, kind of helped me decide what paths that I wanted to take in my study journey. And I would say the only other thing that I would have to add to what everybody said, because I think y'all hit everything perfectly, is I would schedule exams, like multiple exams, not just one exam. That way, if you pass or fail, you have that other exam to look forward to in a way.
Yes.
And try not to reschedule exams, because rescheduling is easy to do, but in the long run, it just takes you longer to get through the process. Yeah, thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Amazing.
there you go.
Congratulations, for sure.
How did you celebrate? I always like to ask this to
Yeah.
people. How did you
Yeah.
celebrate? You
I
haven't
just
yet?
slept. I
Well,
was like a
everybody
half.
was-
Best celebration.
This is your graduation for becoming an architect then.
Yes.
Have you ordered your seal yet?
No, not yet.
Okay, when you do, you're gonna walk around and you're gonna start signing and sealing every now.
Everything.
Well, everyone, I want to first thank all the panelists, thank our moderator. Within our chapter of SoFlo, we've got a lot of people who are moving and grooving and getting licensed, including myself and Stacy. We're close to that finish line. For us as a chapter, and you'll hear for it, we have a big commitment on providing more resources for our team. We want to get as many people across the stage at NOMA conference. And if you don't know what that means, there's a wonderful pinning ceremony to celebrate all the licensed professionals. So here's how we do it. We have a bunch of links that I threw into the chat that are coming from AIA Florida, some events from Shikha, some of the NCARB that are all good starting points for everyone to reference in their journey, no matter where you are. There's a survey, and whether or not you are part of SoFlo, and I know a lot of folks are not here, please take that survey if you are testing. I promise it takes 2.5 minutes, 3 if you want to be lengthy in your reply. And this way we can gauge it, we can share with your local NOMA chapters who are also trying to keep in mind of who is passing. And then in terms of this is the first of many ARE chats. We're going to continue until we get as many folks licensed as we possibly can. So be on the lookout for that. Be on the lookout for our scholarships for ARE support. Both Kanisha, myself, and Shantia are all past recipients of ARE scholarships to pay for exams. So we in SoFlo are here and committed to making our profession that much more diverse every year. So thank you all for joining us. We can't wait for our next call. And we hope you all have a great, wonderful day and sign up for your NCARB test maybe after this panel.
Y'all
Thank
got
you for
this.
having us. Yeah.
Thank
you all
you
got
guys again. Thank you, thank you. And again, thank you to San Fran. I saw the president on here. Hi, Julia.
What up, Julia? All right. Speaking of San Francisco, I'm still on the clock, so I'll see you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Shikha, thank you.
Later.
Thanks all.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good afternoon.